Hi, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to another video. Now, today I was gonna film a December wrap up, but I just don't feel like it. I feel like in December I had my Christmas smut reading vlog, so I talked a lot about those books that I read, and outside of that I feel like I didn't read a lot of other things. And I feel like the things that I did read outside of that vlog, like I've already talked about them quite a bit and I just don't really want to talk about them again. So instead, I've decided to film the JAN-uary book tag created by Jan from JAN-uary, who I will link down below. I love her content. She gives like the best cozy vibes, and I feel like they're cozy and like a gothic, like I feel like when I watch her videos, like I should have on like a dramatic gothic dress and be holding a candelabra and like running through the halls of like a abandoned mansion while vampire bats like fly around me, like, but in a cozy way. I love her content, so if you don't know who she is, you're living under a rock. Please go check her out. Question number 1 is, what are the last and first books that you read of the previous year, so in 2024? The last book that I read in 2024 is actually very on brand for a Jan video. I read Dracula, which is the like podcast graphic audio dramatization of the Dracula like letters. I think that it was a good listening experience. I really liked the way that they brought like words on a paper to life. Like I genuinely felt like I was listening to like an audio diary. But I think like the story of Dracula itself like is so interesting in the beginning, and then towards the end I'm always just like, can this book just end now? Because I did read the original Dracula I think like 2 or 3 years ago, and I felt the same way. I gave it a 3 stars. Like I loved the actors. I thought their voices were well done. The audio production was like so crisp and clear, and there was some songs, and there's one song in particular where Dracula is just like a gay icon. So I think it's definitely worth the listen if you want to hear like a dramatic Dracula performance, I guess. And yeah, it was an experience for sure. And the first book that I read last year was Defiant by Brandon Sanderson, which I gave 4.5 stars, and I thought it was a really great conclusion to that first arc in the series. I do think that he's having like a spin-off series for the Skyward World universe, whatever, and I definitely am gonna read that as well. I loved Skyward in the sense that the characters were young and they felt young, but they also like didn't feel stupid. Like I feel like sometimes in YA, like authors are kind of like, oh, like they're kids so they're dumb, and it's like not all teens are dumb, like not all young adults are dumb, like. And I really liked getting to see like definitely some of the side characters were like, you know, dum-dums, but I feel like it was nice to see some teens who like were capable of doing things in a way that didn't feel like it was just like, oh, like they can just do whatever they want. Like, does that make sense? I feel like I'm not making sense. What I'm trying to say is it was nice to see capable characters who like had skills and abilities that they clearly had worked for, and like some of them make mistakes and they learn from those mistakes and they like learn and grow throughout the series. So it was nice to see like capable, smart characters who also still made mistakes. Like they felt human, they felt real, but at the same time like it didn't feel like an unrealistic representation of like, you know, late teens, early 20s. So for that reason, I loved it. And I also loved it because the sci-fi like didn't go over my head. It was very cosmic, and a little bit speculative in places, and I feel like the way that it was presented to the reader, like I'm not a science person, but anyways, I just love this series, and I loved Spensa, the main character, and I also love Jerkface. If you know, you know. Question number 2 is, what is your first read of this year? I am currently in the middle of 3 books. However, the one that I will definitely finish first is Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear by Shauna Maguire. I have an arc of this from NetGalley, and as of the time I'm filming this, I believe it's January 3rd today. So this book comes out in 4 days on January 7th, and I'm already 60% in. I just started it yesterday. It's literally so good. I am obsessed with the Wayward Children series. Like every single book in this series is like a hit for me, like banger after banger after banger. I love them. This one is no different. We follow Nadia, who is a small orphan in Russia. She was born with a birth defect where her right arm only formed up to her elbow and she doesn't have the rest of her arm, and she never like let that stop her or be a problem in her life. That's how she was born. That's how she learned to adjust to the world around her. That's how she learned to function. And she gets adopted by these people who have good intentions, but definitely are trying to change her and fix her. And so it's definitely like a strained relationship with her and these adoptive parents. And if you know anything about this series, you know our girl Nadia falls through a door. And I just, it's been so like really sad so far. Actually, it's just been really sad because like we're seeing the world through Nadia's eyes, and we're seeing how nothing is affecting her, and she feels completely fine the way that she is. She feels whole and like just fine the way that she was born. She gets adopted from Russia and brought over to America, so she's living in this society where like they're just trying to fix her and like give her a prosthetic that she doesn't want, and they're just like making her life miserable unintentionally. And it's just really sad because she just seems like she's scared to also speak up, and so it's really sad to like be in her thoughts and feelings, and like how she's like not saying anything to like defend herself because she's just a child. She's literally like 9 or 10, like she's very young. And it's just like I just want to like scream at these people on her behalf, especially as a mother, like reading from her point of view and like seeing that she's like not articulating how she's feeling and not like willing to like stand up for herself, and she doesn't want to like get in trouble, and she's just yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir. Like it sucks because it's like I get it, like the parents are not having bad intentions, but at the same time like they also kind of suck, you know what I'm saying? Like they're also not the greatest. So yeah, it's really sad. And I just got to the part where she gets through her door and chef's kiss. I love how every world in this series is literally so different. Like every doorway leads to such a different place, and I just think it's so cool how these worlds exist that tailor like specifically to someone's needs. And it's like, would that world exist if those needs weren't there? Like if someone didn't need that world, would it still be there? I have so many questions. But I love this series if you couldn't tell, and I will 1,000% be finishing it tonight because it's so short and so it's just like bingeable. Like I just want to gobble it up. Question 3 is to share 3 of my reading goals this year. My first reading goal is to focus on series that I'm currently reading. So I'm really happy to be currently reading 3 books in series that like I started last year or have been reading for over a year or whatever. Last year I set up my series that I'm currently reading tracker. I will link it down below if you want to see the video. But I felt like I made a lot of progress in that because I set up the series tracker and I felt like I kept updating where I was reading, making sure like my TBR was including series continuations. But then like literally yesterday, I changed a little bit of the tracker. I moved some of the completed books to a separate page on the tracker, and I moved some series that I own the first book to that series and haven't started it yet also to a different page. So it's literally just series I'm currently reading on one page, and then series I own but haven't started yet on another page, and then another page with series I completed. I thought the series I completed page would have more series on it. Tell me why I only completed 3 series last year. Yell at me, please yell at me. So that's one. My second goal is to, I don't know if this is like specifically a reading goal, but it will help my reading. My second goal for 2025 is to stop doom scrolling. I feel like I could have read so many more things or even just done more hobbies with my time, like playing video games. I did get an injury towards the end of 2024, which kind of prevented me from like using my PC a lot, but I could have spent so much more time like playing a game that like obviously it's like I'm not reading, but like it's something productive, like I'm doing a hobby, I'm like engaged in it versus like just sitting in bed and doom scrolling. And I really want to encourage myself to stay off of my phone as much as I possibly can. Obviously I like do content on YouTube, I'm active on Instagram in the Bookstagram community, and like I'm never gonna be off socials like 1,000%, but I would like to just cut back, especially like when it's just pointless scrolling. Like there are some times where I'm like looking for something specific or I'm watching like friends videos or whatever, but there are times where I'm literally just in a loop of just scrolling for like 4 hours at a time at night, and it's like I could have read a whole book in 4 hours. I could have read the entirety of A Drift of Currents Clean and Clear in 4 hours if I hadn't been doom scrolling, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like reading adjacent because I think it will help my reading. So that's number 2. And number 3, I think I really just want to lean into like DNFing more. I am a huge DNFer. I DNF quite frequently, and I always encourage other people to DNF, but I feel like there were a few times last year where I was like hating a book and I tried so hard to finish them, and then I ended up DNFing them at like 80% when I knew that I wanted to DNF them by like 30%. And I think I just need to stop like forcing myself to continue, even though I did still DNF. Like I could have DNF'd at 30% and spent all of that other time reading a different book that I was actually enjoying, especially like one of them took me weeks to get to the 80% mark before I finally was like, okay, I've had enough. I could have spent all that time reading a different book. But instead I spent weeks forcing myself to and eventually DNF it anyways. I just have to let my gut like fully decide like, okay, if I know at 30% like I'm not enjoying it, like just DNF it. Just let go. I don't need to force myself when I know I'm not gonna like it anyway. Question number 4 is to share 3 of my most anticipated titles, I think releases for this year. I have an entire video for my anticipated 2025 releases. I will link that down below as well. But I think 3 of my most anticipated ones are Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I literally cannot wait. I just know in my gut, I know deep down in my loins that this is going to make me feel the way that Addie LaRue made me feel, and I can't wait for it. And I think another super anticipated release in 2025 is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, which is book 3 in the Emily Wilde series. I love that series so much. Book 1 and 2 are just like pure like whimsy adventure, and like it's a little bit nonsensical, but Emily is also a scholar, so it's like there's a scholarly take on all of these nonsensical things, and I just love the juxtaposition of that. It's actually really funny that I mentioned this book here because in Jan's video she mentioned how she hated that book, so I'm so sorry, Jan, but our tastes definitely do differ quite a bit. That was only 2. I'm trying to think of a third one off the top of my head, and I literally am just drawing a blank. No, I'm actually drawing such a blank right now. I can't think of a single book that I've ever heard of in my entire life. Editing Rachel will so kindly put a picture here of one of the other books that I'm really excited for that is from my anticipated releases video, because current Rachel is having an absolute brain fart. Anyways, question 5 is which goals did I reach or not reach last year? So I feel like with my goals for 2024, I did a little bit of a check-in like 2 or 3 months ago on how my goals were going. I was within the realm of like achieving almost all of them. So I feel like one of my goals was to use the library more, which I definitely did, especially like with Libby and audiobooks. I do utilize that quite frequently. And the other goal was to read more series, like continue series I'm already reading and get that under control. I feel like even though I only fully completed 3 series last year, I made progress in so many, and I am also caught up to a lot of series that like I've read every book in that series. However, the series is still ongoing. Like another book is coming out in 2025 or 2026, so I didn't mark it like as completed. So like technically I've completed more than 3, but they just haven't published the last in the series yet, so like I'm still technically reading it, if that makes sense. But I feel like I'm in the right direction, so I wouldn't say I failed it, but I also didn't accomplish it, if that makes sense. And my numerical goal for last year was to read 80 books, and I read 83 books last year. And honestly, like that feels like I feel like I read 200 books last year, because last year in 2024, my husband got deployed. He was gone for about 7 months, maybe a little bit more than 7 months. So for most of the year last year, I was basically a single mom. I got extremely sick in the middle of the year. I was basically like dying of the flu at one point, also taking care of my child who was also sick. I had 4 people visiting me in between May and August, and so I had a lot of like company that was here, and I obviously I'm not going to read a lot when I have people here. I'd like to focus on my company instead. And yeah, just doing it by myself with my 5-year-old son and me, and keeping us afloat, alive, well fed, well cared for, house cleaned. And so yeah, I read 83 books, which feels great because I just feel like I read a million books last year, considering how busy and hectic the year was for me and how stressful it was for me. And yeah, I don't know. I'm round of applause for me because I feel like I did that. That was great. Good for me. I survived 2024 and I don't ever want to do that again. Question 6 is, are there new releases you've heard of that you have no desire to read? I don't know. So I feel like a lot of books that are in my sphere, the way that I curate my online spaces, like it's a lot of people who read similarly to me. So I am always intrigued in those releases. However, I also follow a lot of people on like YouTube and Instagram who read a lot of romance, and I am not a romance like reader in like a heavy sense of the word. I did read one in December that I actually really enjoyed. So I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think of like one specific book that I'm like, ew, no, I'm never gonna read that, but I honestly can't think off the top of my head. It sucks because I loved Fourth Wing. I know, I get it. It's not the greatest and it's also a little problematic, but you know, it's just like sometimes I just want to read for fun and I don't want to have to think, and Fourth Wing is one of those books for me. And I hated Iron Flame. I thought it was hot garbage. So I'm like a little bit not excited really to read Onyx Storm. I think I'm going to read it, and then if it's also hot garbage like book 2, I'm just gonna DNF the entire series. So it's like, I guess that's one I would say like I'm not really excited for, even though I'm probably gonna read it. Does that make sense? Am I stupid for that? Maybe. Question 7 is, what are some reading habits you want to change this year, if any? I think one reading habit that I need to change is, again, getting distracted by my phone when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go read for a couple hours, and then like I read for 10 minutes and then I pick up my phone for 20, and then I read for 5, and then I pick up my phone for an hour, and then I read for 10, and then I pick up my phone for 20. And it's like, I need to stop that. That needs to end. I think I need to give myself like a screen time, like bedtime, like no random like internet things after like 9:30 or something like that. And I think another reading habit I want to stop is reading a million books at once. I'm currently reading 3 things right now. 2 of them are enormous epic fantasies, and it's like they're so different, and I'm not at all confusing the worlds when I'm like reading them both in the same day. But because they are both so big and epic and chunky, it's like taking me forever. And I think I need to just like stick to 2 books at a time, 1 physical, 1 audio. And by physical, I mean like ebook or physical, like a book, and an audio. So then that way I have one that I can listen to when I'm doing chores or like errands, whatever, and then one that I can read when I'm like sitting down and focusing on reading. I tend to end up reading like 3 or 4 books at a time, and I think that might be part of the problem of why it takes me so long to finish them. I think if I can just like hone in and focus on 2 books at a time, my reading will like, not that I will read more per se, but I think I will finish books in a more timely manner versus like if I'm reading 4 books and they all take me 4 weeks to read. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm explaining that not correctly, but I feel like maybe you get what I'm saying. Let me know. Question number 8 is, are there any adaptations you're excited about? And honestly, like, no. I'm still really butthurt that Netflix canceled 6 of Crows because they also canceled Shadow and Bone. I would love if Netflix could like maybe get their shit together and pull a JK and be like, JK, we're gonna give you 6 Crows this year. That would be great, but I don't think it's gonna happen. And as far as I know, like I'm not really aware of any other adaptations that are coming out of books that I personally am like a fan of. I know there's another Colleen Hoover one coming out this year, I think for Verity, and honestly, like I don't know, I might watch that one just because like I love Anne Hathaway so much. She is the people's princess and she can do no wrong in my opinion, so I might have to watch that just for her. So maybe Verity, I guess, which is crazy because I never thought I would be over here saying I'm excited for a Colleen Hoover adaptation. I'm trying to think of any other adaptations I've ever heard of. Clearly I'm not in the loop. Maybe I need to make it a goal in 2025 to actually pay attention to like book news. If you know of any 2025 adaptations other than Verity coming out, please let me know in the comments because clearly I wasn't paying attention. Question number 9 is my favorite bookish memory from last year. I think my favorite bookish memory from last year is going to a cabin in the woods by a canal and reading a scary book by myself. It was genuinely just so relaxing. Like, my anxiety is so bad, and I'm the kind of person who, like, I don't even like to go to the store by myself. I'll ask my husband to go with me. I don't even like to answer the phone. I'll like ignore it, and I'm like, if it's important, they'll leave me a voicemail. Every time my doorbell rings, like, I want to shit my pants. Like, I am not good with like going out of my house. Like, I don't think I'm agoraphobic because like I do go outside of my house. Like, I go out and I do things and I can physically do it. It just gives me a lot of anxiety depending on what the situation is. If I'm going with someone, it's like I'm fine. But yeah, I don't know. So I feel like because I went to this cabin by myself for 2 nights, and I just got to kind of connect with nature in a way that like made me feel at peace a little bit with like the outside, because I just also don't like bugs or bees. And I was in a space where like the bugs and bees and whatever, like they had their area, and so they didn't really encroach on mine, versus like in my backyard where I'm in the suburbs, like they have nowhere else to go, so like they're encroaching on my space. But it felt nice to be outside and not literally living in terror of bugs and bees. Like within the first like hour of me being there, I was like, this place is so peaceful, it's so calming. I felt like one with nature for the first time in like forever, and it just kind of was nice to like connect with myself and connect with nature. And I felt like really proud of myself because I feel like that was really brave because of how I am with my anxiety. Like, I don't like to do things alone, so doing that alone really like was a huge moment for me. And also, it was just really fun. And I had a great time. I vlogged it. There's a vlog if you want to watch. I'll link it below, but it was so much fun. And I read an entire book while I was there, and the book was so perfect. I felt like I was living in the book. Like, I could not have picked a more perfect book for this vlog, and it was just like a great reading experience, a great like adult experience of like doing something by myself and like not being anxious about it. And yeah, I just had a great time. It was just great. That was my favorite bookish memory from last year. The last and final question is, do you have any carryovers from last year that you still intend on finishing? Yes, I did say earlier I'm currently reading 3 books. I started Adrift in Currents yesterday, so that's a new 2025 read, but the other 2 books I'm carrying over from 2024 are Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson and Valor by John Gwynne. I am absolutely going to be finishing both of these. Like I said, they're just enormous, chunky fantasy. So it is taking me a bit to get to them. And that's okay. That's fine. I don't mind having a carryover from the last year because I'm loving them both. And it's 2 authors that I'm like obsessed with. Like, John Gwynne can do no wrong in my opinion. Brandon Sanderson, I feel like, has come so far. Like, not to spoil Wind and Truth or anything, but like he has learned to really diversify his cast, not just in skin color, but in physical attributes, sexual orientation, a lot of other things, mental health. The mental health representation in Brandon Sanderson's, like in Rhythm of War especially, and Wind and Truth, are insane. Like, the way that I feel called out by the mental health rep in those books is crazy. But I feel like he's come so far, and honestly, I'm just really proud of him. I'm really proud of him for opening his mind and his heart. So those are 2 books that I am like so happy to be still reading from 2024. I could not care less if I didn't end the year with like a 0 currently reading, because I know that's probably a goal for a lot of people. Like, I want to finish all of the books I'm currently reading by New Year's, so then on, you know, I can like start fresh. I love the idea of that, and I was trying to also do that. Unfortunately, I failed because, like I said, I'm loving these 2 books and I'm so fine carrying them over, and definitely am still going to read them. So those are all of the questions for the JAN-uary book tag. Again, Jan will be linked down below in the comments. I will link her channel and her video where she does her tag as well. And if you've made it this far in the video, leave a bat emoji down in the comments in honor of Jan, because bats and vampires are definitely her vibe. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!